Tennis fans have officially lost their minds, and I can't say I'm surprised because we just witnessed the unthinkable last week. Jannik Sinner's 3-month ban and the wild reactions that followed, Vukov's suspension and the strange Rybakina situation, the mixed doubles controversy at the US Open, and finally, the most incredible title runs from Fonseca, Humbert, Kecmanovic, and Anisimova. Last week in tennis came with some of the most shocking drama on and off the court, and I couldn't cover it all myself. That's why I teamed up with Eliza Westcoat, who you might also know as Liza West on Instagram. She happens to be a tennis savant, and you'll be hearing from her throughout the video. Jannik Sinner reached a settlement with WADA, and he's gonna get a 3-month ban, but he'll return just in time for the Italian Open and Roland Garros. The Italian will now serve time from February 9th to May 4th, as WADA has now withdrawn the case with the CAS. Now, it's easy to see why many fans and players are unhappy with the decision. And I feel like, instead of just going with whatever someone says, we need to ask the right questions. Did WADA and the ITIA find Sinner's explanation for the clostable in his system believable? The answer is yes. Did they also agree with the fact that he didn't bear any significant fault or negligence? The answer is also yes. In some of my previous videos, we established the fact that though the whole clostable spray story with Sinner's former physio and fitness trainer was really strange, it seemed logical to believe that Sinner was innocent because of his track record. But now, seeing how the whole thing played out, the issues most fans have with what I've seen isn't whether Sinner was innocent or not. It's about how the ban was timed in a way so that he's not going to miss any slams. Missing Doha, the Sunshine Double, Monte Carlo, and Madrid is definitely some form of punishment because it puts Sinner's #1 spot in danger, and he won't be able to defend about 1,600 points or fight for many more points during that time. However, the punishment pales in comparison to missing a Grand Slam or two. On top of that, most of us didn't know a settlement with WADA was in the cards all along. Now, the second question to ask is, why did WADA decide to settle? And why did Sinner's lawyers agree as well? The simplest answer is that both parties decided it would be a favorable outcome for them. How did they come to that conclusion? I can't say I have all the answers. WADA probably thought that there was a chance that they would lose the case, and Sinner's camp thought that there was also a chance that they could get a harsher punishment. That's just my guess. But what precedent does this set going forward? I know each doping case is different, and the Halep, Beatriz Haddad-Maia, and Tara Moore cases all had their peculiarities, but one final question I have is this. If players got the wrong end of the stick in the past and careers were literally ruined, would you really want that to continue? I'll say this much. If there's anything we can all agree on, it's that the anti-doping system needs some serious reform. There's been a complete breakdown of trust between the players themselves and fans due to the lack of consistency in how these things are being handled. I'm not going to dwell too much on the Sinner situation, first because I'll have it covered in a separate video, and second because I don't want it to take away from the shine of some of the other amazing events that happened on the tennis tour last week. The best of the bunch for me, Joao Fonseca's title run. When I dropped the video on Fonseca about a month ago, it quickly became one of my most liked and watched deep dives, and y'all were arguing it out in the comments on whether it was too early or not to make any predictions about his trajectory. Well, after seeing his title run in Buenos Aires, I'm not sure there will be many more doubters. The kid took down 5 solid players, 2 of whom were seeded en route to the title. I said it before, and I'll say it again, Fonseca is going to be a problem for everyone, and boy is Andy Murray already looking forward to that Alcaraz test. What stood out the most about Fonseca's title run to me was how he was able to respond to the difficult situations though. In the future, we might look back at that Buenos Aires tournament and say that it was the one moment where the boy became the man. Fonseca took down Etcheverry, a top 30 player who also happens to be very good on clay. Beating Etcheverry in straight sets and racking up 28 winners in the process was a statement in its own right. The ground strokes, the completeness of his skill set, and his overpowering aggression simply outclassed Etcheverry. However, the real test was yet to come. In the next round, we saw Fonseca play a poor first set against Coria before recovering to take the match in 3 sets. Seeing Fonseca win despite not playing his best tennis added another building block to his future GOAT case. He then faced Mariano Navone in the quarterfinal in what I thought was his most difficult test. See, Fonseca also didn't have his A game in that match, and this time, the pressure got to him. Down a break in the 3rd set, he double faulted to give Navone 2 match points. But he then followed that up with a cross-court forehand which Navone couldn't deal with, and then an insane backhand down the line to save both match points. How on earth does a teenager manage to raise his level during the most important points? That's just not normal, unless your name is Alcaraz. And the best part? Fonseca then went on to break Navone twice to steal the match. The semis against Jarde were next, and I'll say things didn't get any easier. Fonseca took the first set and served for the match in the second, but then lost 4 games in a row to lose the set. Again, he reacted in the best way possible by turning the third set into one-way traffic, not to mention the fact that he overcame his own fair share of physical struggles as well. Then, in the final against the 5th seed Cerundolo, Fonseca served for the match twice, at 5-4 and then at 6-5, but he also got broken twice. In between points, we saw him talking to himself, encouraging himself to play better. Again, another pointer to how he already has the psychological side of his game figured out. Fonseca didn't have it easy in any match, but his mental toughness carried him when his exceptional ground strokes weren't as forthcoming as they usually were. Speaking of the ground strokes, I love the fact that Fonseca was able to turn many of the neutral rallies on their head. He was using the backhand slice a lot, using the drop shots, and also coming forward when he needed to. Seeing the Brazilian fall flat on his back and covering his face after winning the title in Buenos Aires was one of the most refreshing things I've seen on a tennis court. He's now the youngest ranked champion in Argentina Open history, the first man born in 2006 to win a title, and the youngest Brazilian man in history to win an ATP title. And here's what a year's worth of transformation looks like for Fonseca. Can we call him a generational talent now? And guys, before we move on, props to Francisco Cerundolo for a great tournament that saw him take down the top seed Zverev in the quarterfinal, and also for achieving the incredibly rare sibling goal in tennis. But now, taking a trip to Marseille, we found ourselves starting the GOAT debate all over again. Who's the greatest tennis player of all time? Djokovic, Nadal, or Federer? No, it's Ugo Humbert on indoor hard courts. In France. Can someone explain to me how he keeps doing this? Humbert defended his title in Marseille last week and is now 18-1 in his last 19 indoor matches in France. Oh, and these are all the names he's taken down since November 2023. It's his 7th ATP title for the Frenchman and his 4th on indoor hard courts. One of the most obvious things about Humbert is his surface preference. His exceptional ability to redirect balls coming in with a lot of pace, his short, compact ground strokes, and his big lefty sliding serve, followed by aggressive +1s, made Humbert's game perfectly tailored for the fast indoor hard courts in Marseille. And when you add that to the energy and home court advantage Humbert gets from the French crowd, you find yourself with a player who is extremely difficult to beat on the surface. Does he sometimes push it with his celebrations and grunts? I'll leave you to figure that out. The final against Medvedev was high quality, even though it ended in straight sets in favor of the number 2 seed Humbert. I'll keep this one short and sweet. As you would have guessed, Humbert took full advantage of his leftiness by serving out wide on the ad court. That strategy earned him 12 out of 13 points behind his first delivery, and it's something Hamad had no answers for. But interestingly, the second serve did even more damage, as Medvedev's backhand return just wasn't good enough. On top of that, Humbert troubled Medvedev with depth, exposed his backhand during the cross-court exchanges, and was also cashing in on Hamad's second serves by attacking them with deadly precision. Humbert was able to instantly put Medvedev in a defensive position off the second serve, and the result? A successful title defense. I thought Medvedev had a fantastic tournament, taking down the number 3 seed Khachanov in the round of 16 and the top seed Medvedev in the semis, both in straight sets and without dropping more than 5 games. Hamad has the firepower to blast players off the court, the soft hands to hit sweet drop shots, and the deadly slices to drag opponents forward. I thought he used those soft hands to perfection against Medvedev, but was left at risk of being too predictable with the drop shots. Or should we say Humbert was a lot more alert to them? Overall, I'm happy with what I'm seeing from Medvedev. Earlier this season, he took down number 12 Holger Rune in Davis Cup action, and he's now earned his first top 10 win. He's clearly on the right path. But that being said, there's still a lot of room for improvement, especially off the backhand and second serve returns. Hamad sometimes looks slow. He's a big guy weighing about 190 pounds. I reckon he needs to shed a few pounds to make him maybe a little bit lighter on his feet. And as someone similarly built, trying to make a tennis comeback at a much lower level, I totally get it. By the way, I'm looking for hitting partners in South Florida, Austin, New York, and California, so if you're interested in getting on court with me, fill out the description in the link below and we'll get on court soon. Shout out to Evan and Adam for being awesome already. As for Medvedev, it's quickly getting to that point where you're tempted to hit the panic button. Losing to Lerner Tien, Bellucci, and Medjedovic all on hard courts is super tough to watch. Those are three players ranked outside the top 70 or top 80 at the time they played. In Delray Beach, we saw Alejandro Davidovich Fokina come agonizingly close to winning his first ATP title. I thought Davidovich Fokina had a fantastic tournament. He's always had the elite level shot making, but the mental fortitude seemed to be a problem. Though last week, it looked like things were finally starting to come together for him. He took down two-time defending champ Taylor Fritz in the quarterfinal, despite battling an injury in the second set to reach his first ATP semifinal since 2023. He beat Arnaldi in the semis, but just couldn't get over the line against Kecmanovic in the final. And that final came with some wild swings and momentum. Davidovich Fokina took the first set 6-3 before getting served a breadstick in the second set. Kecmanovic is a very respectable player on hard courts, so I'm not sure anyone expected him to be brushed off. But the main talking point was in the third set. With both players pushing each other to their physical limits, Davidovich Fokina got the early break and was up 5-2, 40-15. On the first match point, both players got into an extended rally, and Davidovich Fokina did extremely well to turn defense into offense, but his forehand landed just wide. So unlucky there. But wait until you see the second match point. Kecmanovic was saved by a net cord from a simple put-away volley. Davidovich Fokina responded well to the disappointment and was up 30-15 when serving for the match, but a couple of forehand errors took the wind out of his sails. From there, he just fell off and lost more than half a dozen points in a row, including getting broken to love on his serve. Davidovich Fokina tried to force a tiebreak when Kecmanovic was serving for the championship, but fell just short. Sadly, the wait for a first ATP title continues for Davidovich Fokina. Seeing that he's suffered quite a number of painful defeats from winning positions throughout his career, this one's gotta hurt. But I'm sure he'll have more chances. I don't want to take any of the spotlight away from Kecmanovic, because as much as Davidovich Fokina collapsed, going from 5-2 up in the third to losing 7-5 in that decider, Kecmanovic put himself in a position for good things to happen. He simply didn't go away, and his reward for that, a second career ATP title. But what a disappointing tournament for the Americans. Fritz, Mickelson, Giron, and Nakashima were all seeded, but couldn't win the title in front of their home crowd. Such a bummer. On Tuesday, the US Open announced that it was changing the format for the mixed doubles event, beginning at this year's tournament. The changes include moving the event to Fan Week, which is normally reserved for singles qualifying and practice sessions from top players. And instead of a 32-team draw, it's going to be a 16-team draw played over just 2 days. In addition to making the field smaller, it's going to be based on singles rankings and wildcards. And oh, I almost forgot to mention, the sets are going to be shortened as well. Every match except the final will be best of 3 sets to 4 games, with a 10-point match tiebreak third set. The final, however, would have regular 6-game sets. Now, the prize money will be up to $1 million, and also the aim is to give more of a spotlight to doubles. I have a lot of questions, Liza. Doesn't it feel like they're turning a competitive tournament into something that more closely resembles an exhibition? What's going to happen to the doubles players who actually benefit more from playing this type of format? Was there any way that the players were told that this change was coming? And does this change actually propose a viable solution to the problems that doubles is facing?
The US Open is certainly making a bold move with its decision to drastically alter the format of mixed doubles at this year's championships. It strays from tradition in so many ways and of course largely impacts the touring doubles specialists. But it's a move that I think will ultimately be a large success in terms of generating interest and viewership. It's no secret that mixed doubles in its current form struggles for following and viewership. Even at the Grand Slams, it's played on empty courts with limited TV coverage and exposure. It's been tradition that's been continued for tradition's sake, and I think it might be the right time to explore new options. The sport of tennis can't afford to run and host tournaments that really are only for the benefit of the players entering it and a small population of fans who are really into mixed doubles, of whom I don't know a lot. I love the fact that it will be run during Fan Week, which is free for all fans, and it will give folks a chance to see some of the top players and tennis personalities in action on a big stadium court for free. The simple truth is that the sport of mixed doubles does have so much more interest and pull when it features top players competing. For me, if we want to keep the sport of doubles alive and inspire more tennis players to play in mixed doubles especially, putting a dedicated spotlight on it with top players and big prize money will only help the sport in the long run. I understand the doubles players' frustration entirely, but from a fan and business perspective, I think this idea will win out. Noah, what do you think?
I think it'll be a good move for the US Open, especially after we overcome the growing pains of rolling out the change this year. Making high-level tennis accessible for free to fans is only a good thing, and the US Open remains on the cutting edge of these types of innovations in tennis. As for the players, yes, it's a huge shakeup to an established format, but at the end of the day, they're getting in front of fans who otherwise wouldn't be seeing them play in the first place. That's going to be good for doubles overall. When we landed in Doha, it became all the more obvious that the outcome of matches are usually determined by the contrast or similarities in styles. For the large section of our audience who follows the WTA Tour, I hope you came prepared, because we're digging deep into what happened in Doha. Early in the week, Sabalenka became the first #1 player to lose an opening match in Doha, thanks to Alexandrova's brilliant shot-making. Fresh off her title run in Linz, Alexandrova was brimming with confidence, and it reflected in her tennis. Sabalenka was a familiar foe for Alexandrova. Prior to the match, they had actually faced each other 7 times, with Sabalenka coming out on top on 4 occasions. Alexandrova, however, was determined to level their head-to-head this time. The game plan was simple. Knowing she could also rip the ball almost as hard, Alexandrova knew she had to match fire with fire and flatten out shots at any given opportunity. But to start with, Alexandrova needed to get as many balls as possible back in play on Sabalenka's serve to increase the likelihood of Sabalenka missing on the next shot. This is something Gauff has almost perfected against Sabalenka. When it came down to the rallies, Alexandrova's moneymaker was her angled cross-court forehand, which she used to great effect.
Oh, what a shot.
She was also doing an excellent job at redirecting the balls perfectly when she had the upper hand during rallies. Even with that, the match was close and could have gone either way. After sharing the spoils in the first 2 sets, Alexandrova needed to come from a breakdown twice in the 3rd set before stealing it in the tiebreak. My takeaway is that the extra belief she got from winning the biggest title of her career gave Alexandrova that extra confidence she needed to go out and beat Sabalenka. Let's also remember that Alexandrova has a combined 9-8 record against Sabalenka, Iga, and Rybakina. She's 2-3 against Iga and 3-1 against Rybakina. Not to mention the fact that she's beaten most of the top players: Gauff, Navarro, Pegula, a total of 16 top 10 wins. She's definitely one of the most dangerous unseeded players in these tournaments. Alexandrova beat Pegula to reach the semis before falling to Anisimova, who we're going to talk about shortly. But before we get to that, Sabalenka wasn't the only top player to be sent packing. Coco Gauff and Zheng Qinwen were also given a reality check on the same day. Gauff was stunned by Marta Kostyuk in straights. Kostyuk had actually lost all 3 previous matches to Gauff on hard courts, so not many fans, including myself, saw this win coming. The Ukrainian was deadly on the forehand and avoided backhand cross-court exchanges as much as possible, knowing that she was no match for Coco in that department. Ultimately, the usual culprits for Coco reared their ugly heads again: the forehand and the second serve. Gauff struggled with deep returns to her forehand all match. At some point, it looked like she couldn't string 2 decent forehands together. After Kostyuk breezed her way through the first set, Coco upped her intensity and was playing a lot better in the second. However, she still continued to bleed forehand errors. Despite going up an early break, she just couldn't hold on to it.
Seems like confidence is just gone here from Coco Gauff.
Serving to reach a second set tiebreak, Gauff committed back-to-back double faults to give Kostyuk 2 match points. And she converted the second when Gauff's backhand found the net.
Well, what a win for Marta Kostyuk.
Gauff finished the match with 39 unforced errors and only 8 winners, which was extremely poor for her standards. It's also now her 3rd straight loss in Doha. A word about Kostyuk, though. She's beginning to develop into a much more well-rounded player. Her forehand is huge, the shot selection is great, the athleticism is elite, and only a handful of players can match it. Most importantly, she's becoming a more mature player. Hopefully, she finds the consistency to play great tennis week in, week out. Meanwhile, Zheng Qinwen's defeat to Ons Jabeur wasn't totally shocking. Ons came with lots of variety as usual, and with the support of the crowd, managed to pull through in straight sets for her first top 10 win since Madrid 2024. For those who don't know, Zheng has been dealing with some physical problems, which also affected her Australian Open campaign last month. It appears to be an elbow problem, which maybe might not have fully healed. Iga had already taken down Sakkari and Noskova when she faced a familiar foe in Elena Rybakina. Diving into that match, the first set was over in a hurry as Iga showed exceptional footwork to track down Rybakina's shots and respond with some pop. Iga took the first set in comfortable fashion.
Game.
Iga Swiatek.
However, Rybakina wasn't going to just be a sitting duck, so she came out guns blazing in the second set, getting the early break and was looking to level things. Iga, on the other hand, was biding her time, and she got her chance in the 8th game when she hit a spectacular passing shot to get back on serve. One key dynamic I also noticed during the match was on the second serve. Swiatek was sticking Rybakina with uncomfortable body serves on pressure points. The body serve was almost like her get-out-of-jail-free card. Meanwhile, Rybakina was faltering on second serves and managed to win only 33% of points. Serving to take the set into a tiebreak, Rybakina let a 40-30 lead slip and double faulted at match point as the match ended pretty anticlimactically.
Game, set match, Swiatek.
I thought the Swiatek-Rybakina match was going to be a lot more competitive, but unfortunately for Rybakina, she finds herself in a difficult situation, which is no doubt affecting her performance on court. We'll touch on the Rybakina-Vukov situation shortly, but first, I gotta say, there were a lot of reasons to be worried about Rybakina. But just when it looked like Iga was turning Doha into an exhibition tournament for the 4th year in a row, she ran into her kryptonite. Iga's hopes for a four-peat ended in the semis at the hands of who else? Yelena Ostapenko, who extended her lead to 5-0 in their head-to-head. Penko had been on fire all week, playing lights-out tennis and absolutely demolishing top players in Paulini and Ons Jabeur prior to the Swiatek match. As I said earlier, stylistic differences determine the outcome of matches, and Iga's game plays perfectly into Penko's strengths. Both the serve and topspin land directly in Ostapenko's strike zone, and you know what that means? RIP to those balls. Don't believe me? See for yourself. In a flurry of overwhelming winners, Ostapenko stamped her authority on the match, winning 8 of the first 9 points. Iga tried to activate damage control in the first set, but still ended up losing 6-3. But just when you thought things couldn't get worse, they did in the second set. This time, Iga wouldn't win a single game on her serve, and at some point in the set, it looked like Iga had completely given up on the match. Up 4-love and having won 6 straight games, Ostapenko lapsed momentarily to concede her serve for the only time with a double fault. But it was a mere blip, and she resumed with insane winners from corner to close out the final 2 games.
Brilliant.
Penko wrapped up 24 winners to Swiatek's 7 and only committed 15 unforced errors. Seeing the world number 2 beaten like a drum and her 15-match winning streak in Doha coming to an end left me speechless. However, nothing prepared me for what Ostapenko had to say after the match. Quote, "I was pretty confident that I obviously would beat her." That's some boss-level statement you only make when you have someone's number. See, the thing with Penko is that she doesn't even give you time to hit the ball or settle in during rallies. She's either hitting winners or making wild errors, and you're just there, with no rhythm to work with. Iga just can't match that raw kind of power. To beat Penko, she'll have to find a way to hit much flatter and a lot closer to the baseline, which is easier said than done. I don't even think the surface matters anymore. Ostapenko also plays well on clay, so even at Roland Garros, I might be tempted to back Penko for the win if they face each other there. But let's also remember that matchup dynamics can change, like we've seen in Sinner-Medvedev and Federer-Nalbandian in the past. Iga has plenty of time to find answers to Penko's game, and that's something she's definitely capable of. With the win, Ostapenko advanced to her 4th final at the WTA 1000 level or above, and her first since Miami in 2018. This time last year, Ostapenko had just returned to the top 10 after a 5-year gap, but had since fallen out of the top 30 after failing to string back-to-back wins post-Wimbledon last year, partly due to an abdominal injury. Ostapenko entered Doha with a 1-4 record for the season, but somehow she managed to knife her way through the draw, winning all 5 matches without dropping a set. But she was going to be facing a totally different opponent in Amanda Anisimova. Let's get into the final. It was the first Doha final to feature 2 players ranked outside the top 30. The conditions were windy, and it started raining at some point. In a battle of power players, both women traded breaks to 3-all, crushing insane forehand winners on break points.
And she gets that.
But while they were somewhat even in the forehand battle, Anisimova's backhand was out of this world, and it proved to be a major differentiator as the American put her nose in front once again for a 5-4 lead.
Their backhand.
Amanda's backhand, however, was just one part of the equation. The other part of it was Penko's self-destructing powers on full display. In that 9th game where Anisimova broke her, Penko hit multiple double faults for the second time in the set, and she ended up spraying 19 unforced errors to only 9 winners. In the second set, both players were evenly matched until a 20-minute rain delay came at 3-all, deuce. But before then, we already saw a key dynamic at play. Both players were absolutely destroying each other's second serves, so much so that neither player managed to win up to half the points on their second. Penko's self-destructing pattern repeated itself in the 7th game. Up 40-15, what does she do? She double faults to 40-30, and Anisimova hits a return winner off the first serve to get to deuce. Another exchange, and they go to deuce again, though this time play is suspended for about 20 minutes. Penko resumes play with a double fault, pushes the game to deuce, then unforced error, unforced error. Anisimova gets the break to go up 4-3 and consolidates with a gutsy hold. We reach the 9th game and we see this from Ostapenko. Double fault, ace, double fault, and a return winner from Anisimova as she converts on her second match point after 1 hour and 21 minutes.
And what a fitting way to end it.
So, as I said earlier, both players were eating each other's second serves alive, but Anisimova's backhand and her ability to hit equally as hard but with a lot more accuracy than Penko were the big factors at play. Anisimova's elite return game saw her win 20 of Ostapenko's 29 second service points, helping her amass 12 break points in the final. On Penko's part, she lived and died by her ultra-aggressive and high-risk brand of tennis and had absolutely no answers to Anisimova's heavy hitting off the backhand. Apart from Samsonova, Anisimova was by far the only player who could hit deep shots and not give Penko the opportunity to strike first. She did a great job redirecting balls and thriving on Penko's relative lack of movement. On top of that, she was forcing Ostapenko to go for more on her second serves, and the result was 10 double faults. That's a total of 2.5 games given out on a charity donation. We're beginning to see a trend where Ostapenko absolutely demolishes Iga and then just goes on to lose in the next round in an almost anticlimactic fashion. But big ups to Anisimova. She thrives against big hitters, and there's a reason she's beaten Sabalenka 5 times. It's the 3rd WTA title of her career and her first at the 1000 level. Anisimova is the first player since the tournament's inception in 2001 to defeat 5 top 30 opponents in Doha, and the first American player to defeat 6 top 40 opponents in a single event since Serena Williams at the Australian Open in 2007. For those of you who don't know her story, it's so refreshing to see how far she's come. Just a year ago, she was ranked outside the top 200, but rebounded in Toronto to reach the final. The reward for her title win in Doha is now a top 20 debut. But more importantly is that the growth comes with the 8-month hiatus Anisimova took in 2023 for mental health reasons. Her fitness and grit seems to have improved a lot, but also she's now willing to track down balls she probably would have given up on in the past. Seeing Madison Keys win big in Melbourne and now Anisimova in Doha couldn't be more refreshing for the Americans. And now to a quick rundown of some of the other major talking points from around tennis last week. But before we get into that, if you love what we're doing here at Courtside Tennis, smash that subscribe button and also subscribe to our newsletter, the Courtside Digest. It's the place for tennis news and opinions, and we'll have you covered through all the tournaments that go on each week. I'll leave the link in the description for you down below. You know what to do. And now to the most uncomfortable and disturbing subject in this video. Earlier in the week, the WTA upheld its decision to suspend Rybakina's former coach Stefan Vukov following an internal investigation. The word on the street is that it's gonna be for a year. Now, things were rough for Rybakina in 2024. She withdrew from more than half a dozen tournaments due to a so-called illness that made it difficult for her to play tennis. However, it soon became clear that she was dealing with stressful conditions in which her coach Vukov had a role to play in. They split, and it looked like Rybakina was gonna move on to a new chapter with a seasoned coach in Goran Ivanisevic, but that didn't quite happen. Instead, Ivanisevic was blindsided by Rybakina's move to bring Vukov back, and although she pleaded with him to stay, Goran walked away after the Australian Open. It's one thing to be disappointed in how Rybakina managed to blow such an opportunity to work with Goran. He could have taken her serve to even greater heights and helped her with a more well-rounded game, but even that's irrelevant considering the toxic situation Rybakina has found herself in. According to the reports, Vukov subjected her to verbal and mental abuse, which made her ill. He called her stupid, made her cry, and said that if it weren't for him, she'd still be picking potatoes in Russia. Now that's terrible, textbook abuse, but it gets even worse. After they separated, the reports have it that Vukov harassed Rybakina by refusing to leave her alone after the US Open, and he was also harassing her over text. On top of that, when he was provisionally suspended, Vukov broke the code of conduct and violated the no contact directive by trying to reach out to Rybakina. The WTA has been monitoring the situation for years, and they've pulled out all the stops to do damage control, but there's only so much they can do within their jurisdiction. There were also reports that Rybakina and Vukov shared the same hotel room in Melbourne. Rybakina is an adult, and she can be romantically linked with whoever she wants. If it's true that she has a personal relationship outside of the coaching dynamic with Vukov, then there isn't much anyone can do in that regard. But on a professional level, the WTA is well within their jurisdiction to make sure players work in a safe environment, even as independent contractors. What I'm wondering, though, is why Rybakina, who definitely suffered through this situation, didn't cooperate with the WTA. Earlier in the year, she said Vukov never abused her. This time, when asked about the suspension, Rybakina said, quote, "I'm just disappointed with the situation and how the process went. I'm not going to comment much on that anymore." End quote. If there's anything we can all agree on, it's that there's a negative pattern at play and that this relationship appears to be highly dysfunctional and with some manipulation taking place. But what can you do when someone who needs help tells you they don't? Props to WTA Chief Executive Portia Archer for stressing the need to create a safe environment for players. Though at the end of the day, there's only so much to do to restore an imbalance of power. All we can say as fans is that we hope that Rybakina is okay, because the last thing you want to see is a player speaking out years after their career ended about how they were abused. But let me know what you think about the situation, because it's very disturbing. Taking a look at a few other players, Diego Schwartzman just called time on the sport. From selling rubber bracelets with his mom at tournaments so they could afford traveling for tennis, to breaking into the top 10 and beating Nadal on clay, Schwartzman will go down in history as one of the most tenacious players we've ever seen. At 5'7", not many people gave him a chance, but we all know what he achieved. A career high of world number 8, Roland Garros semis, a top 30 presence for over half a decade, the sole honor of ending Nadal's streak of consecutive sets won at Roland Garros twice, not to mention going toe-to-toe with the best players in history. I have nothing but respect for Diego. Fernando Verdasco will also hang up his racket, and Novak Djokovic is scheduled to play doubles with him in Doha.
I'm so happy to announce that I will be playing my last tournament after 20 years on the ATP Tour with my friend Novak Djokovic.
Nicolas Basilashvili had a pretty strong reaction to being snubbed with the Doha wildcards. Should he have reacted by calling them out in any way? I don't think so. Getting snubbed when you desperately need wildcards is as painful as it gets, and it's understandable to get upset. But then you ask yourself, aren't wildcards at the discretion of the tournament organizers? They have the right to do whatever they want with the wildcards, and this should be taken in good faith. Basilashvili's current ranking is 148, and his results haven't been great in the last couple of challengers he's played in. The draw is stacked in Doha, and the organizers didn't see the value to include him in their plans. That said, I don't think he should be holding their feet to the fire. More so, we've seen worse cases with Dominic Thiem unfortunately overlooked at the French Open and Wimbledon. Elsewhere, Zverev said he regrets saying he wasn't good enough after losing to Jannik Sinner in the Australian Open final. Zverev says he still believes he can win a Grand Slam this year, and I'm definitely rooting for him. Sasha probably said those harsh words when he was feeling pretty down and out and in the heat of the moment, but with more time ultimately comes a better perspective. Now let's hope he can channel that self-belief into the 5th set at a Grand Slam final. But here's what Eliza says about the subject.
While Sasha might say that he maybe regrets saying he wasn't good enough, I think his comments only further cement my belief that Sasha has a long way to go in terms of the work required mentally to become a Grand Slam champion. A couple of weeks ago, I actually made this video about how Sasha could learn from women's AO champion Madison Keys.
Could Zverev benefit from Madison Keys' advice? After the match, Madison Keys revealed she had received a lot of therapy.
Lots of therapy. And not just about tennis, but about how I felt about myself.
Look, everyone is navigating challenges in life, and whether it's sports or something else, I think Madison's honesty about therapy helping her achieve her professional goals was really inspiring. She was telling herself to be brave on court, and without knowing it, telling all of us to be brave too in how we approach our challenges. After researching and talking to some tennis insiders, it seems Zverev's approach is always very court-focused. The emphasis after a loss is to hit more balls. But perhaps the missing piece for him is to start working with a mental coach to address why the Zverev we're used to seeing win tournaments can't get over the line in a Grand Slam final despite having good opportunities. It's all too personal to know how it really could help someone, but Madison's logic made so much sense to me. He again said how much better Sinner was than him and revealed that he was mentally very down after that final. And while of course anyone would be down, it came across as so defeatist, and I feel like that gave us quite a good look inside the Zverev psyche. I believe that if Zverev wants to win a slam, he must find a way to unburden himself from the pressure of winning a Grand Slam, or he might live in regret.
Switching focus to the coaching department, we now know that Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray have agreed to continue their coaching partnership up until Wimbledon at least. It's a big win not just for both legends, but also for the fans. As far as rankings go, we're in for some major shakeups on both tours. Medvedev moves up to number 6 after reaching the semis in Marseille, while Humbert is up 3 spots to number 14 following his title defense. Kecmanovic gets a massive boost 14 spots up to number 42 after winning the 250 in Delray Beach, and runner-up Davidovich Fokina gets a welcome back into the top 50. Laszlo Djere also creeps back into the top 100, while Hamad Medjedovic sees a huge leap 23 spots up to number 73. Saving the best for last, it's also a top 70 debut for Joao Fonseca. There are no changes in the top 10. Anisimova moves 23 spots up and makes her top 20 debut at number 18, thanks to the 1,000 points gained in Doha. Meanwhile, Ostapenko's finalist points see her go up 11 spots up to number 26 in the world. Katerina Alexandrova edges closer to a top 20 return, while Naomi Osaka's injury layoff sees her fall outside the top 50. Sofia Kenin gets up to number 57 after reaching the round of 16 in Doha, while Karolina Pliskova drops out of the top 100. We have 3 ongoing tournaments, in Doha, Rio, and Dubai, and literally all the top players are in action. You can keep up with all the action here on Courtside Tennis by smashing that subscribe button, and let me know your thoughts on the Jannik Sinner situation, Fonseca's incredible title run, Anisimova's win in Doha, the mixed doubles controversy at the US Open, and all the other major storylines we covered. I can't wait to read your comments.